It was a beautiful Sunday morning in Central Park. Families were having picnics, kids were playing on the grass, and joggers were enjoying their weekend runs. Officer Richard Thompson drove his patrol car slowly through the area, scanning the park with suspicious eyes. Thompson had been a cop for 15 years. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray streaks in his hair and a permanent frown on his face. People in the neighborhood knew him as a tough officer who didn't smile much. What they didn't know was that he carried deep prejudices in his heart. As he parked his car and began his foot patrol, Thompson noticed a muscular man sitting alone on a bench near the children's playground. The man wore a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and sunglasses. He seemed to be watching the kids playing, which immediately made Thompson uneasy. The man on the bench was actually Vin Diesel, the famous movie star. But with his casual clothes and sunglasses, he looked like any regular dad enjoying a day at the park. His 3 children were playing on the swings, laughing and calling out, "Dad, watch this," every few minutes. Diesel smiled warmly at his kids, giving them thumbs up when they showed him their tricks on the jungle gym. He loved these quiet Sunday mornings when he could just be a normal father, away from the cameras and the spotlight. But Officer Thompson didn't see a loving father. His biased mind saw something else entirely. He saw a suspicious man of color sitting too close to children. His training told him to observe first, but his prejudices pushed him to act immediately. Thompson adjusted his belt, straightened his uniform, and started walking toward the bench. His hand rested on his radio, ready to call for backup if needed. He had already made up his mind about the situation before speaking a single word. Meanwhile, Diesel remained peaceful on the bench, completely unaware of the approaching officer. He cheered as his youngest daughter finally made it across the monkey bars. Other parents nearby smiled at his enthusiasm, some even recognizing him but respecting his privacy. A young mother sitting on the next bench leaned over and said, "Your kids are adorable." Diesel nodded and thanked her, sharing that proud parent smile that crosses all boundaries. He pulled out his phone to take a video of his son attempting a cartwheel. Thompson quickened his pace, his boots crunching on the gravel path. He saw the man pull out a phone and immediately thought, is he filming other people's children? His prejudiced assumptions were running wild now. Several other park visitors noticed the officer approaching with such intensity. Some felt that familiar tension in the air when they saw a police officer moving with purpose towards someone who looked like Diesel. A few people quietly took out their phones, sensing something might happen. As Thompson got closer, he could hear the children calling out "Dad" to the man on the bench. But his biased mind dismissed this evidence, thinking the man might be pretending to have children there. He had already decided this situation was suspicious, and nothing was going to change his mind. The morning sun continued to shine brightly, birds chirped in the trees, and children's laughter filled the air. It was a perfect day in the park, but a storm was brewing. In just a few moments, Officer Thompson's prejudices were about to collide with reality in a way that would change his life forever. Officer Thompson reached the bench and stood directly in front of Diesel, blocking his view of the playground. His shadow fell across the peaceful scene, and suddenly the warm morning felt a bit colder. "Sir, I need to see some identification," Thompson said firmly, his voice carrying an edge of authority mixed with suspicion. Diesel looked up, surprised by the sudden interruption. He slowly removed his sunglasses, squinting in the bright sunlight. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked calmly, his deep voice respectful but confused. "I asked for your ID," Thompson repeated, his tone growing harder. "What are you doing here? This is a family area." Diesel's eyebrows raised slightly. He gestured toward the playground. "I'm watching my children play. They're right there, the 3 on the swings." Thompson glanced at the playground but didn't seem convinced. "Those are your kids?" he asked skeptically. "Can you prove that?" Some nearby parents started paying attention to the conversation. A few recognized Diesel now that his sunglasses were off, and whispers began spreading through the park. "Isn't that the guy from the movies?" someone murmured. Diesel remained composed despite the officer's aggressive questioning. "Officer, I come here every Sunday with my kids. Many people here know us. Is there a specific reason you're asking me these questions?" Thompson's jaw tightened. "I've received complaints about suspicious individuals in this area. You fit the description." "What description would that be?" Diesel asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. Thompson ignored the question. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stand up and show me your ID. Now." A young father nearby spoke up. "Officer, that's Vin Diesel. He's here with his kids all the time." Thompson shot an angry look at the man. "Sir, please mind your own business. This is a police matter." More phones came out as people began recording. Thompson noticed but was too deep into the confrontation to back down now. His pride wouldn't let him admit he might be wrong. Diesel's children had noticed something was happening. His eldest daughter called out, "Dad, is everything okay?" The worry in her voice was clear. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just talking to the officer." Diesel replied with a reassuring smile before turning back to Thompson. "Officer, you're scaring my children. Can we handle this differently?" Thompson's face reddened. "Are you refusing to comply with a lawful order? I can arrest you for obstruction." An elderly woman who had been feeding pigeons nearby walked over. "Officer Thompson," she said, recognizing his nameplate, "I've seen this gentleman here many Sundays with his children. He's a good father. Why are you bothering him?" Thompson was getting flustered. More people were gathering, and he could hear them whispering his name and Diesel's name. But his stubbornness kept him pushing forward. "Ma'am, please step back." "This doesn't concern you," he said tersely. Diesel stood up slowly, not wanting to appear threatening. At his full height, he was impressive, but he kept his hands visible and his movements calm. "Officer, I'm happy to show you my ID, but I want you to understand something first." Thompson's hand moved closer to his radio. "No speeches. ID, now." A teenager nearby called out, "Yo, that's definitely Vin Diesel. I loved you in the last movie, man." Thompson's eyes widened as more people confirmed the man's identity. The realization was starting to dawn on him, but he was in too deep. His prejudices had led him down this path, and now his pride wouldn't let him back down gracefully. "I don't care if you're a movie star or not," Thompson said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "When a police officer asks for ID, you comply." Diesel reached slowly for his wallet. "Of course, officer. I respect the law. I'm just concerned about what made you single me out in a park full of parents." The tension in the air was thick as Diesel pulled out his wallet. Everyone watching knew this confrontation was about more than just an ID check. It was about assumptions, prejudices, and what happens when authority meets with bias. As Diesel opened his wallet, Thompson's face showed a mixture of determination and growing uncertainty. The morning that had started so peacefully was about to become a defining moment in both men's lives. Diesel pulled out his driver's license and handed it to Thompson with steady hands. The officer snatched it roughly, studying it with exaggerated attention. As he read the name Vin Diesel printed clearly on the ID, his face went through several changes: confusion, recognition, and then embarrassment. The crowd had grown larger now. At least 20 people were watching, most with their phones out, recording everything. Some were shaking their heads in disappointment at what they were witnessing. "Dad." Diesel's youngest daughter ran up and hugged his leg. "Can we go get ice cream now?" She looked up at Thompson with innocent eyes, not understanding why this policeman was being mean to her father. Thompson stared at the little girl, then back at the ID, then at Diesel's face. The reality was hitting him hard. He had just harassed a famous actor in front of dozens of witnesses, all because of his own prejudices. Thompson stammered, trying to find words. His earlier confidence had completely vanished. Diesel bent down to his daughter. "Just a minute, sweetheart. Go back to your brother and sister. I'll be right there." She nodded and ran back to the playground, looking over her shoulder worriedly. An older police officer arrived on the scene, having noticed the crowd. "Thompson, what's going on here?" he asked, immediately sensing something was wrong. Thompson's face was now bright red. "Sergeant, I was just checking this gentleman's ID. There were reports of suspicious activity." The sergeant looked at Diesel, recognition flashing in his eyes. "Mr. Diesel, I apologize for any inconvenience. Is everything all right here?" Before Diesel could answer, Thompson interrupted. He wasn't cooperating at first. "I had to insist on seeing identification." A woman in the crowd shouted, "That's not true." He was completely respectful. "You targeted him for no reason." Several others voiced their agreement. "We saw everything. He was just watching his kids." "This is profiling." The sergeant's expression grew stern as he looked at Thompson. "We'll discuss this later. Mr. Diesel, again, I apologize." Thompson stood there, still holding Diesel's ID, his hand now shaking slightly. He knew he had messed up badly. This could cost him his job, his reputation, everything. Diesel remained remarkably calm throughout. He looked at Thompson and said quietly, "Officer, may I have my ID back?" Thompson handed it back, avoiding eye contact. The crowd was growing restless, some calling for Thompson's badge number, others demanding he apologize. The sergeant stepped between Thompson and the crowd. "Everyone, please remain calm. We'll handle this appropriately." Diesel's other two children had joined their sister, standing close to their father. They could feel the tension but didn't fully understand what was happening. "Officer Thompson," Diesel said, his voice firm but not angry, "do you know why you stopped me today, really?" Thompson opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't admit the truth in front of everyone, that he had seen a person of color near children, and immediately assumed the worst. The phones kept recording. This incident would surely be all over social media within hours. Thompson's career hung in the balance. "I was doing my job," Thompson finally muttered, but even he didn't believe his own words. "No," Diesel replied gently. "You were acting on assumptions, and those assumptions could have led to something tragic if I hadn't remained calm." The crowd murmured in agreement. The sergeant looked increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. Thompson's shoulders slumped. He knew Diesel was right. He had let his biases control his actions, and now he was facing the consequences in the most public way possible. "Mr. Diesel," the sergeant interjected, "would you like to file a formal complaint? You'd be within your rights." The crowd fell silent, waiting for Diesel's response. This was the moment that could end Thompson's career. Everyone expected Diesel to say yes, to demand justice for what had happened. Thompson stood frozen, his future hanging on Diesel's next words. The children looked up at their father, wondering what he would do. The sun continued to shine, but for Thompson, it felt like the darkest moment of his life. Diesel looked at the sergeant, then at Thompson, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. The crowd waited silently, phones still recording, everyone expecting Diesel to demand justice. "Actually, Sergeant," Diesel said slowly, "I'd like to handle this differently." Thompson's head snapped up, surprised. The sergeant raised his eyebrows. "Sir?" Diesel turned to his children. "Kids, why don't you go play for a few more minutes? Daddy needs to talk to this officer." The children hesitated, but Diesel's reassuring smile convinced them. They walked back to the playground, though his eldest daughter kept looking back concernedly. "Officer Thompson," Diesel said, "would you sit down with me for a moment?" Thompson looked confused and wary. I don't think that's appropriate." "Please," Diesel insisted, gesturing to the bench. "Just a conversation. No cameras, no complaints. Just two men talking." The sergeant nodded at Thompson. "It's your choice, but I think you should listen to what Mr. Diesel has to say." Reluctantly, Thompson sat down on the far end of the bench, keeping distance between them. The crowd began to disperse slightly, though many stayed to watch from afar. "I'm sorry," Thompson blurted out suddenly. "I shouldn't have. I didn't realize." Diesel held up his hand. "You're sorry because you found out who I am. But what if I wasn't famous? What if I was just a regular father watching his kids?" Thompson shifted uncomfortably, unable to answer. "Let me tell you something," Diesel continued. "I grew up experiencing exactly what just happened here. People making assumptions about me based on how I look. Security following me in stores. People crossing the street when they saw me coming." Thompson stared at his shoes, his face showing shame. "But you know what I learned?" Diesel's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Getting angry doesn't change minds. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. The only thing that works is conversation and understanding. Why are you being nice to me?" Thompson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I could have ruined your day with your kids. I embarrassed you in public." Diesel smiled slightly. "Because I believe people can change. And because someone once gave me a second chance when I needed it most." The sergeant, who had been standing nearby, moved away to give them privacy. The remaining crowd had quieted down, some still filming, but from a respectful distance. "I've been a cop for 15 years, Thompson said slowly. I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting people. But who were you protecting today? Diesel asked. And from what? Thompson was silent for a long moment. I guess I was acting on fear, my own fear. Fear of what? Of people who don't look like me. Of losing control. Of, Thompson's voice trailed off. Of change? Diesel suggested. Thompson nodded slightly. My father was a cop too. He taught me to always be suspicious, always assume the worst. He said it would keep me alive. And has it kept you alive? It's kept me isolated, Thompson admitted. Angry. Always looking for threats that aren't there. Diesel's children were now building a sandcastle, their laughter carrying across the park. He watched them for a moment before speaking again. Those are my kids, he said softly. They're growing up in a world where they'll face people who think like you did today. What kind of world do you want them to inherit? Thompson looked at the children, really looked at them for the first time. They were just kids, happy and innocent, building dreams in sand. I don't want them to be afraid of police officers, Thompson said quietly. Then be the change, Diesel replied. You have a choice right now. You can go back to your old ways, or you can use this moment to become better. Thompson's eyes were moist. I don't know if I can change. These thoughts, these fears, they're deep. Change isn't easy, Diesel agreed. But it starts with admitting there's a problem. You've already taken that first step. The sun was getting warmer now, and more families were arriving at the park. Some recognized the unusual scene. A police officer and a movie star having what looked like a heart-to-heart conversation on a park bench. What do I do now? Thompson asked, looking lost. Diesel stood up, extending his hand. You start by shaking my hand. Not as a cop and a suspect, but as two human beings. Thompson hesitated, then slowly stood and took Diesel's hand. Their handshake was firm, meaningful, a bridge between two worlds that had just collided. As they shook hands, Diesel noticed Thompson's grip was trembling slightly. The tough cop exterior was crumbling, revealing a man struggling with years of ingrained prejudice. Sit back down, Diesel said kindly. Let's talk more. Thompson sat, this time closer to Diesel. The remaining onlookers had mostly returned to their own activities, though a few still watched curiously from a distance. You know, Diesel began, I wasn't always the person you see today. I grew up in New York, raised by my mother and stepfather. We didn't have much money. I got into trouble sometimes, made bad choices. Thompson listened intently, surprised by this personal revelation. I could have ended up on a very different path, Diesel continued. But certain people believed in me. Teachers, mentors, even a cop once who chose to give me a warning instead of arresting me for something stupid I did as a teenager. A cop helped you? Thompson asked, genuinely curious. He did more than help. He talked to me like a human being. Asked about my dreams, my family. He saw potential in me instead of just seeing a troublemaker. Thompson nodded slowly. I've never done that. I've always just seen threats. Let me ask you something, Diesel said. Why did you become a police officer? Thompson thought for a moment. To help people. To make a difference. To be like my father. And are you helping people when you approach them with suspicion and bias? No, Thompson admitted. I'm probably making things worse. Diesel's children ran over briefly, showing him a pretty rock they'd found. He admired it enthusiastically before they scampered back to their play. Thompson watched this interaction with new eyes. Your kids aren't afraid of you, Thompson observed. They shouldn't be. I'm their protector, not their intimidator, just like you should be for your community. Thompson rubbed his face with his hands. I've been doing this job all wrong, haven't I? You've been doing it the way you were taught, Diesel corrected, but you can learn a new way. How? After 15 years, how do I change? Diesel thought for a moment. Start small. Tomorrow, when you go on patrol, try seeing people as individuals, not threats. Talk to shop owners, kids, elderly folks. Learn their names. Hear their stories. That simple? Change starts simple. One interaction at a time. One smile instead of a frown. One conversation instead of a confrontation. The sergeant approached carefully. Everything okay here? Diesel nodded. We're having a good talk. The sergeant looked relieved and walked away again, giving them space. "I've probably ruined my career today," Thompson said quietly. "This will be all over the internet." "Maybe," Diesel agreed. "But what matters is what you do next. You can either be the cop who harassed someone in the park, or you can be the cop who learned from his mistake and became better." "You really think I can change?" "I know you can. The fact that you're still sitting here, listening, tells me you want to." Thompson took a deep breath. "I've been angry for so long. At the world, at changes I don't understand, at people who don't look like me. It's exhausting." "Hate is exhausting," Diesel agreed. "Love and understanding take effort too, but they give back energy instead of draining it." A young interracial couple walked by with their baby. Previously, Thompson might have watched them with suspicion. Now he found himself wondering about their story, their hopes for their child. "I have a son," Thompson said suddenly. "He's 12. What if he grows up to be like me? Then be the father you want him to learn from. Show him a better way." Thompson nodded, determination replacing some of the shame on his face. "Where do I start? I mean, really start?" "There are programs, workshops on bias and community policing." "But the real work? It happens here," Diesel tapped his chest. "In your heart, every day, choosing understanding over fear." "Will you?" Thompson hesitated. "Will you check on me? Make sure I'm doing better?" Diesel smiled. "Give me your card. I'll call you in a month, see how you're doing." Thompson handed over his card with shaking hands. "Thank you for not destroying me when you could have." "We're all works in progress," Diesel replied. "The important thing is to keep working." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching children play, families laugh, and life continue around them. The park that had been a battlefield an hour ago now felt like a place of healing. "I should get back to my kids," Diesel finally said. "They're probably wondering what's taking so long." Thompson stood up with him. "Mr. Diesel, I'm truly sorry. Not just because you're famous, but because I was wrong. Dead wrong." "I believe you," Diesel said. "Now go prove it to yourself and everyone else." As Diesel walked toward his children, Thompson called out one more time, "How will I know if I'm doing it right?" Diesel turned back with a smile. "When kids smile at you instead of being afraid. When people wave hello instead of avoiding eye contact. When you feel pride in protecting everyone, not just some." Thompson nodded, standing straighter. Something had shifted in him. A door had opened that could never be fully closed again. 3 weeks passed since that Sunday morning in the park. Officer Thompson sat in his patrol car, looking at the business card Diesel had given him. He'd kept it in his wallet, pulling it out whenever he felt himself slipping back into old habits. Today was different, though. Today he was actually going to use it. His phone rang twice before a familiar deep voice answered. "This is Vin." "Mr. Diesel, this is Officer Thompson, from the park." There was a brief pause. "Officer Thompson, I was wondering when you'd call. How are you?" I wanted to tell you what's been happening, if you have a minute." "I've got time. Tell me." Thompson took a deep breath. "That video from the park went viral, just like I feared. The department launched an investigation. I thought I'd be fired for sure." "But you weren't?" "No, the surgeon spoke up for me. Told them about our conversation, how you chose to help instead of filing a complaint. They put me on probation and mandatory sensitivity training." "How's that going?" "It's hard," Thompson admitted, "but I'm learning. Yesterday, I helped a family whose car broke down. They were from India, barely spoke English. The old me would have been suspicious, maybe even hostile. But I remembered what you said about seeing people as individuals." "What did you do?" "I called the tow truck, helped them communicate with the driver, even gave them a ride to their hotel. The father shook my hand afterward. His kids gave me high fives. It felt good." Thompson could hear Diesel smiling through the phone. "That's progress, officer." "There's something else," Thompson continued. "I talked to my son about what happened. Told him everything. He was disappointed in me at first, but then he said something that stuck with me." "What did he say?" "He said, 'Dad, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after.' Smart kid, right?" "Very smart. Must take after his mother," Diesel joked. Thompson laughed, surprising himself. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. The department is starting a new community outreach program. They want officers to visit schools, talk to kids about safety and respect. Would you consider coming to speak with us sometime? To the police department. Yes, your story, our encounter, it could help other officers. Show them there's a different way. Diesel was quiet for a moment. You know what? I'll do it. Set it up and let me know when. Really, that would mean a lot. We're in this together now, Thompson. Your growth helps everyone. After the call ended, Thompson sat in his car feeling lighter than he had in years. He noticed a group of teenagers hanging out near a convenience store. Usually, he'd approach them with suspicion, tell them to move along. Instead, he parked and walked over casually. Afternoon, guys. Everything okay? The teens looked surprised by his friendly tone. Yes, officer. Just waiting for our friend. Cool. Hot day, huh? Make sure you stay hydrated. He nodded and walked back to his car, leaving the shocked but smiling teenagers behind. Back at the station that evening, Thompson found himself in the break room with younger officers. They were discussing a recent incident involving racial profiling in another city. Sometimes you have to go with your gut, one rookie said. If someone looks suspicious. Thompson interrupted. Can I tell you guys something? About what happened to me in the park last month? The room fell silent. Everyone had seen the video, but no one had heard Thompson's side. I thought I was going with my gut that day. Turns out my gut was full of prejudice I didn't even know I had. I embarrassed myself, the department, and almost ruined an innocent man's day with his kids. The rookie shifted uncomfortably. But how do you know when? You don't assume, Thompson said firmly. You observe, you communicate, you treat everyone with respect until they give you a real reason not to. Not a reason based on their appearance or your fears. Another officer spoke up. I heard Diesel didn't press charges. Why not? Thompson smiled. Because he saw something in me I didn't see in myself, the ability to change. He taught me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show compassion. As Thompson spoke, he noticed the sergeant standing in the doorway, nodding approvingly. After the younger officers left, the sergeant approached him. You've come a long way in 3 weeks, Thompson. I've got a long way to go, Sarge, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Keep it up. That night, Thompson went home and hugged his son extra tight. I'm proud of you, Dad, the boy said, for changing. Thompson's eyes welled up. I'm trying to be the father and officer you can be proud of. As he lay in bed that night, Thompson thought about how one moment of kindness from an unexpected source had started a chain reaction of change. He fell asleep determined to pass that kindness forward, one interaction at a time. The next morning, he pinned on his badge with a new sense of purpose. Today, he would protect and serve everyone, not just those who looked like him. Today, he would be the officer he always should have been. 6 months had passed since that transformative Sunday in Central Park. Officer Thompson stood at the front of a packed community center, adjusting his collar nervously. Today was the launch of the police department's new diversity and inclusion program, and he was about to share his story publicly for the first time. The room filled with fellow officers, community leaders, and local residents. In the front row sat Vin Diesel, who had kept his promise to support Thompson's journey. Next to him sat Thompson's son, beaming with pride. Good evening, everyone, Thompson began, his voice steady despite his nerves. 6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake. I let my prejudices guide my actions, and I targeted an innocent father in the park simply because of how he looked. The room was silent, everyone listening intently. That father was Vin Diesel. Instead of destroying my career, which he had every right to do, he chose to teach me. He showed me that change is possible, that compassion is stronger than anger. Thompson clicked to show the viral video on the screen behind him. Some people shifted uncomfortably, watching the confrontation unfold. This is hard to watch, Thompson admitted. But it's important, because this is who I was, and I never want to be that person again. He then showed a series of photos from the past 6 months. Thompson helping at a community food drive, playing basketball with neighborhood kids, attending cultural festivals, and participating in bias training workshops. These past months haven't been easy. Unlearning years of prejudice is hard work. But every smile I get from a child, every thank you from someone I've helped, Every connection I make with people I once would have avoided, it's worth it. A young officer raised his hand. What's the biggest change you've noticed in yourself? Thompson thought for a moment. I sleep better at night. I used to carry so much anger and fear. Now I carry hope and understanding. My relationships with my family, my colleagues, and my community have all improved. Diesel stood up to speak. When I met Officer Thompson, I saw a man trapped by his own fears. Today, I see a leader who's brave enough to admit his mistakes and work to correct them. That's the kind of courage we need in law enforcement. The room erupted in applause. Thompson felt tears welling up but didn't try to hide them. After the presentation, people lined up to shake Thompson's hand. An elderly woman approached him. Officer, I used to cross the street when I saw you coming. Now my grandchildren wave to you. Thank you for changing. A teenage boy came up next. You helped my mom when her car broke down last month. You didn't have to stay and make sure we got home safe, but you did. That meant a lot. As the crowd thinned, Thompson found himself face to face with Diesel again. You did good today, Diesel said, clapping him on the shoulder. I couldn't have done any of this without that second chance you gave me. You earned it by being willing to change. Not everyone can do that. Thompson's son joined them. Dad, can we get ice cream with Mr. Diesel? Diesel laughed. Actually, I was hoping we could all go to the park. Full circle, you know. An hour later, they sat on the same bench where it all began. Thompson's son and Diesel's children played together on the playground, their laughter filling the air. Look at them, Diesel said. No prejudice, no fear, just kids being kids. Thompson nodded. That's the world I want to help create. For them. You already are, Diesel assured him. One day at a time. As the sun began to set, Thompson realized he had become a different person. The shield on his chest meant something new now, not power over others, but a promise to protect everyone equally. Months turned into years. Thompson became known throughout the city as the cop who listened, who helped, who saw people instead of threats. He led training sessions, mentored young officers, and spoke at schools about the importance of overcoming bias. The video that once threatened to end his career became his most powerful teaching tool. This is what fear and prejudice look like, he would say. And this is why we must do better. Every Sunday, Thompson returned to that park bench, sometimes alone, sometimes with his family, always remembering the day a movie star chose compassion over condemnation and changed the course of his life. In the end, it wasn't just Thompson who changed. His transformation inspired others, fellow officers, community members, even people who saw his story online. The ripple effect of one act of forgiveness continued to spread, proving that understanding and empathy could indeed overcome fear and prejudice. As Thompson often said in his speeches, change begins with a single choice, the choice to see humanity in everyone, regardless of our differences. That's the lesson I learned in a park, from a man I tried to judge without knowing. And that's the lesson I'll spend the rest of my life teaching others.